All right. So thanks everyone for coming today. I'm going to get started. I'm just going to share my screen. So just give me one moment here. All right. So hello and welcome to Talent Match's webinar in collaboration with the BC Arts Council. Before I introduce everyone, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples on whose lands each of our speakers is working from today. And we invite you to introduce yourself and acknowledge the land you are on in the chat. In Vancouver, our speakers are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And in Victoria, our speakers are on the ancestral lands of the Lekwungen people, today known as the Songhees and the Esquamite nations. My name is Debbie Reese, and I'm Talent Match's project manager. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Erin Macklem is the program officer with the Arts Council, and her areas of responsibility include co-op placements, youth engagement for the performing arts, and the early career development program for the performing arts, which includes dance, theater, and music. Michelle Benjamin is also program officer with the BC Arts Council. Her areas of responsibility include arts periodicals, book publishers, creative writers, and early career development for the studio arts, which includes museums, literary arts, media arts, and visual arts. Also joining us today to help with technical support is Rosanna Dollar, who is ACE-WIL's design and marketing assistant. Also, just let you know that we are recording the webinar, so you can rewatch it later or share it with your colleagues. We'll also share the slides so you don't have to take extensive notes. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please add them to the chat. At the end of the presentation, we'll go through as many of them as we can. But before I hand things over to Erin and Michelle, I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about the Talent Match program. So for those of you who may not know, MATCH stands for Museums, Arts, Tourism, Culture, and Hospitality. And the Talent Match program is a collaboration between the BC Museums Association, the BC Alliance for Arts and Culture, Go to HR, which is the BC Tourism Industry's Human Resources Association, and ACE-WIL, the Association for Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning, BC UConn. The program is funded by the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Training. Talent Match's goal is to help museums, arts, tourism, culture, and hospitality organizations access student talent through co-ops and other work integrated learning placements, so that those students can in turn help those organizations recover and renew in a post-COVID world. The program provides employers with resources to make hiring a student easier. This includes information on funding, help connecting to post-secondary institutions with programs that are relevant to the positions or projects employers want students to help with, and tips on how to recruit and onboard students into your organization. In addition to resources, Talent Match provides one-on-one support. So you can email me to arrange a time to talk about your organizational needs. And you can see both my email address and the Talent Match URL in the slide right now. I can help you brainstorm for the project or position and find the information that's most helpful to you in bringing on a student. We're pleased to be bringing today's info session on the BC Arts Council's programs aimed at supporting artists and cultural workers throughout their careers, with funding programs ranging from scholarship awards and co-op placements through to the early career development program and project assistance grants to help artists across disciplines. Today, Erin and Michelle will be telling us a bit about each of these programs with a focus on the early career development program. And while this program allows organizations to bring on a recent graduate rather than a current student, Talent Match's steering committee thought that it would be valuable to employers who want to bring on an intern, to post-secondary school faculty so they can guide students who are finishing their studies to a potential next step in their career, as well as to individuals who are in the early stages of their career, emerging practitioners, recent graduates, and soon-to-be graduates. Again, if you have any questions throughout the session today, please add them to the chat, and we'll go through the questions after the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Erin and Michelle, and I'll stop my share. There you go.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm going to now start my share. This is always like the most stressful part of any online meeting. Sharing the screen. All right. How's that? Are we seeing a slide that says British Columbia Arts Council?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. I know this has been a big and very quick undertaking to get this info session together, and Michelle and I and my colleagues at the BC Arts Council are really grateful for the opportunity to do some outreach like this and talk about our programs, particularly because so many people are joining us today. The attendance has been fantastic, so thank you. As Debbie mentioned, we're going to specifically focus on the early career development program in this conversation. Before we dive into that, though, I want to acknowledge that the BC Arts Council carries out its work on the land of Indigenous nations throughout what is colonially known as British Columbia. And say that we're really grateful for the continuing relationships with Indigenous people in BC that develop through our work together. Also, we acknowledge and we raise our hands to the Lekwungen people, known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, on whose ancestral lands we operate our main offices, and as Debbie said, where Michelle and I are calling in from today. On a personal note, I wanted to take a second to pay my respects at this time to the Tecumleks, to Secwepemc First Nation, and to Indigenous families with ties to the Kamloops Indian Residential School, and to Indigenous people throughout the country, for whom I know this past week has brought historic and ongoing trauma right back to the surface. So I'm thinking about that right now, and will acknowledge that for myself, I'm feeling a little bit raw and unfocused, but Michelle and I have put together, I think, a pretty solid presentation from which to read from, and I hope that you'll bear with me. Michelle and I are going to introduce ourselves, and then we'll, as I say, we'll share information about the early career development program. Specifically, we'll briefly go over some of the other programs that we offer at the BC Arts Council. So, Tanshe Kiawao, Erin Macklem, Dishnakoshin, Lekwungen Ototan, Victoria Ototan. Hello, everyone. It is good to be with you today in this online forum. My name is Erin Macklem. I'm an uninvited guest on the land of the Lekwungen people, what is colonially known as Victoria. I'm grateful to be raising my 9-year-old daughter here with respect for this place and its people. I'm French and Métis from the St. Norbert Red River settlement on my mother's side. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Greater Victoria and the Métis Nation of BC. I'm happy to share some Michif language with you just now in my introduction. I want to acknowledge that I did not grow up in my culture and that I benefit from the white skin privilege of my Irish ancestors on my father's side. I've been fortunate to live in many different communities throughout BC, including Dawson Creek, Creston, Kamloops, Kelowna. Before I moved to Victoria, Kelowna is where my family still lives. I moved to these lands to pursue my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theatre at the University of Victoria. Prior to coming to the BC Arts Council in 2018, I worked for 25 years in the professional theatre sector as a costume designer, a playwright. Most recently, I was artistic associate and outreach coordinator for the Belfry Theatre for 12 years. At the BC Arts Council, I run the co-op, oh, Debbie already told you this part. I run the co-op placement program, the youth engagement program with my colleague Anissa Paulson, and the early career development program on the performing arts side of things with my colleague Michelle Benjamin, who I'm now going to pass the mic to.
Thank you, Erin, and hello, everyone. Very grateful to be here. As Erin said, on the lands of the Lekwungen people, where I live with in gratitude, here in my house in Esquimalt. I grew up mostly in Ottawa on the lands of the Anishinaabe people, and while I've lived on the West Coast now for just over 30 years, my parents and their parents, and going back 4 and 5 generations, are from Mi'kmaq territory on the East Coast. where they were farmers and coal miners and shopkeepers in Acadia and what we now call New Brunswick and mostly Nova Scotia. My artistic background is in book publishing. For 25 years, I was the publisher at Polestar, a small and mighty literary press, and then later at Raincoast Books and also at Greystone Books. Most recently, though, I lived for 10 years in Sonoma Territory on Gabriola Island, where I worked in community arts as the executive director of the Gabriola Arts Council. My wife, Maggie, and I moved to Victoria from Gabriola just over a year ago in January, so that I could take this job at the BC Arts Council, and so that we could also live in the same city as our daughter, Caitlin, who just turned 30. So at the BC Arts Council, I primarily have responsibility for the literary programs. So as Debbie said, book and periodical publishers, literary projects, literary festivals. I also manage the creative writing portfolio now that our esteemed colleague Walter Kwan is on the edge of retirement. And I co-manage the really wonderful early career development program with Erin. And I feel privileged every day to be doing this work, serving and supporting the arts sector, and also working with a group of really incredibly smart and dedicated people at the BC Arts Council. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the BC Arts Council, just give you a little background before we dive into the details of programs. BC Arts Council is a division within the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport, and we work under the direction of our minister, the Honourable Melanie Mark. BC Arts Council has a mandate to support artists and arts and cultural activity in communities throughout BC, and we've been providing funding to artists and arts organizations since 1995. The BC Arts Council is governed by 15 board members or directors who, at their best, represent all regions of the province, as well as cultural diversity and artistic discipline in communities. The directors provide oversight and guidance for all BC Arts Council activities, and the current board chair is Dr. Stan Chung. The British Columbia Arts Council provides financial support through grants for arts and cultural activity in communities across BC, and we support a range of activities through other programs and cultural policy. For example, we fund community arts councils in rural and urban centers, individual artists in all disciplines, professional performing arts companies, Indigenous artists and cultural organizations, art galleries, museums, literary and music festivals, and more. Program officers like me and Erin coordinate the grant programs, provide support to applicants, including answering questions and offering assistance during the application process, and then providing feedback upon request after the assessment process. The BC Arts Council has worked continuously with First Peoples Cultural Council for more than 20 years as a partner and a funder. And this aligns with our commitments by the province and BC Arts Council's strategic plan to support the self-determination and cultural rights of Indigenous peoples. We're also funding partners with Creative BC, Art Starts, and the BC Touring Council.
So Michelle's just mentioned our strategic plan. We did want to take a moment to talk a little bit about it, as it guides so much of the work that we do right now. You can see on this slide sort of an encapsulation of it, but you can find online a much more fulsome information about it. But in July 2018, the BC Arts Council released the new Foundation's strategic plan for the BC Arts Council 2018 to 2022, which articulates the vision of artists and cultural organizations in BC are well supported, thriving, and able to reach their full potential under the principles of equity, diversity, accessibility, and reconciliation. Arts and culture are seen as fundamental to developing vibrant and resilient communities where the people of BC are highly engaged in the province's unique arts and culture sector, recognized for its innovation and leadership in Canada and abroad. The intention of the strategic plan was to facilitate more equitable access to arts funding and to decolonize many of our programs and practices by focusing on 4 strategic directions: And these are in no particular order. Sustainability and creative development, represented there by the blue triangle. This means that we'll be building on our programs, bolstering support in specific areas to ensure that diversity of artists and organizations are resilient, relevant, and well supported to build capacity and to create. So in the last year, our focus was very much on resilience and working with government to support the sector through the uncertainty and these unstable COVID-19 times. In the yellow triangle there, you'll see Indigenous arts and culture. So we're committed to deepening our engagement with the processes of decolonization and reconciliation, taking our lead from Indigenous artists, organizations, and communities, and respecting the principle of self-determination. One aspect of the work that we've been undertaking in this area is almost doubling investment in First Peoples Cultural Council, who are, as Michelle said, one of our funding partners. In the green triangle, you can see equity, diversity, and access. And so this has meant improving access to our programs, building principles of equity throughout the organization at every level to better support meaningful and genuine forms of diversity. And we will continue this work through collaboration and co-creation with equity deserving communities. Work in this area has included working with an external equity consultant to build an equity framework, and we are starting to move forward with recommendations from that process. And in red, you can see regional arts and community arts, focusing on the diversity of both professional and community arts. And to that end, we have been increasing investment in community arts practice and in community festivals. As I say, this whole plan is available in detail on our website, and we'd really encourage you to read the plan and keep these priorities front of mind throughout the assessment process. For those of you who are already familiar with the Early Career Development Program, you may notice how the strategic plan has really guided some of the changes in the eligibility and the assessment criteria outlined in the new guidelines this year. So this slide sort of represents not all, but some of the different types of funding that we offer at the BC Arts Council. And I'll just briefly go through them. They're run by different program officers like Michelle and I, and you can find our contact information on the website. And I encourage you to seek out information on all of our different programs and to contact the program officers who run them for more details. The scholarship program offers awards of up to $6,000 per year, and these are available to BC residents to attend full-time post-secondary arts training, or to pursue some of the high school half-day dance programs that exist in the province. The co-op placements program assists organizations, arts and culture organizations, to hire students through co-op placements or work integrated learning programs for professional work experience in the arts and culture sector, or with Indigenous organizations offering arts and culture programming and activities. The Early Career Development Program, we're going to get into a lot of detail about that shortly, so I won't spend too much time on that now. The Professional Development Program assists professional artists and arts and culture professionals to take advantage of opportunities which require travel, when we're allowed to travel again, or to undertake specific learning activities to advance their practice or their career. Individual Arts Awards are awards for creation. They support professional artists in the creation of specific projects in all disciplines. Project assistants are similarly in the performing arts. There are grants for specific projects initiated by individuals, also collectives and organizations. So these are some of the programs that specifically address artistic and/or career development. We do offer other programs as well, such as operating assistance, infrastructure grants, and other special projects. As I said, have a look online and contact the relevant program officer for more information on any of these programs. You're on mute, Michelle. There you are.
Okay, that's the only time this is going to happen in this presentation. So let's dive into the Early Career Development Program. So the Early Career Development Program supports immersive and highly impactful opportunities for emerging and early career practitioners with the goal to develop their artistic and/or administrative practice, to participate in knowledge transfer, skill sharing, and reciprocal learning in the sector and within their discipline, to expand their career experience, professional networks and exposure, and their professional portfolio, and to build capacity in their identified communities, for example, their geographic community, their own cultural community, their area of practice. It's important to note that the Early Career Development Program is not intended to support established or mid-career artists and practitioners transitioning within their practice or career. Career development activities for more established artists and practitioners may be eligible for support through the Professional Development Program that Erin referenced earlier. So assistance is available to arts and cultural organizations and to individual arts practitioners through 4 components in the ECD program.
I did that thing, didn't I?
You which? We're good.
I did that thing where I scrolled instead of clicked, and now I'm not sure if we're on the right slide. Okay, you did that,
That's the one.
There we go. Sorry, everyone.
So the ECD program is divided into 4 components. 2 of those are the components to which organizations apply, and 2 of those are the components to which individual arts practitioners will apply. So the components to which the organizations apply are internship and cohort. So internship supports arts and cultural organizations to host an early career practitioner in a paid internship. Component 2 is a cohort component, which supports arts and cultural organizations to host a group of early career practitioners in paid professional development positions. And in this case, a group is 2 or more. And then the 2 components to which individuals apply directly are residency, which supports early career practitioners to pursue a residency with an arts and cultural organization. And finally, mentorship, which supports an early career practitioner to develop a sustained one-on-one learning through a mentorship with an established practitioner working in their field or discipline.
So we're going to talk about the eligibility for this program, and there's sort of 3 different aspects of eligibility to be aware of. So when looking to apply for a program, you'll need to determine that the early career practitioner that's being supported in any component is eligible. If you're an organization applying for a mentorship or a cohort, or sorry, for an internship or a cohort, you need to ensure that your organization is eligible to apply. And then there's the eligibility of the specific projects or activities that you're undertaking. And so we'll go over each of these in a bit more detail now. So we'll talk first about the eligibility of the early career practitioner. So the early career practitioner could be the person applying in the case of a residency or a mentorship, or it could be the person that's being supported through an internship or a cohort. So in all cases, to be eligible to participate in any component, the early career practitioner must be working in one or more of the arts disciplines funded by the BC Arts Council. And in the guidelines, there is a link to a detailed list of those disciplines. Must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident who ordinarily resides in BC, having lived in the province for at least 12 months immediately prior to the application being submitted. And for more information on this piece, again, there's a link in the guidelines that will take you to a page about determining BC residency. The early career practitioner must not currently be enrolled in full-time studies. Must not have been previously supported twice already by a grant in any component of this program. Must not be named as an early career practitioner in any other application in this program's current intake. So you have to kind of pick one. And must have submitted all required final reports on previous BC Arts Council grants as of the application deadline for this program, which is June 30th. So in addition to all of those pieces, the early career practitioner must be all of those and either have completed basic training in their discipline within 5 years of the application deadline. So can be of any age, but have completed basic training within the last 5 years, or have completed basic training in their discipline within 10 years of the application deadline and be 30 years or younger, and or identify as one or more of the following: Indigenous, that is First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, racialized, also referred to as culturally diverse, IBPOC, person of color, visible minority, and or deaf, or person living with disabilities, and or with mental illness, and or living outside of the capital region, not including Suq-Wet'suwet'en, the Gulf Islands, or the Juan de Fuca electoral area, or Greater Vancouver. So with that long list that I've just been through, again, it's tied to having being 10 years outside of your basic training as opposed to 5. So applicants are eligible if basic training will be completed within 6 months of the application deadline. So if you're just about to finish the basic training and before the proposed activities begin. And I think that's it for that slide. What do we mean by basic training? So this is intended to be appropriate and relevant education in a specific field of practice that has prepared an early career practitioner to work at a professional level. So that could include a degree or a certificate program from an academic institution, but it might be something more like traditional knowledge transfer or an apprenticeship with a qualified peer recognized practitioner. So having talked about eligibility of the early career practitioner, I'll speak to the eligibility of activities that individuals can apply for. So for an eligible residency project must provide significant immersive opportunities for skills sharing and or knowledge exchange at an established arts and or cultural organization. An eligible mentorship project must provide a one-on-one structured relationship with an established and qualified professional who will share skills and knowledge. And a few things to note, it's possible to have more than one mentor and or to identify a main mentor and other sources of expertise. However, the program will not support a series of unrelated mentorship activities. So applicants must clearly describe how different mentors are contributing to a cohesive project. Collaborative applications are eligible. So if more than one person would like to mentor with the same mentor, that's eligible if all the participating applicants meet the eligibility criteria. In that instance, one individual must make the application on behalf of the collective or partnership. This does have tax implications for that applicant, which I'll get to in a second. Also noting that virtual residencies and mentorships are eligible if criteria above are met. Grants are taxable income and must be reported as such. So it's important to note that individuals receiving grants on their own behalf or on behalf of a collective or a collaborative application will be issued a T4 for the year in which the grant payment was processed. And it's important to document how the money was spent, to keep receipts and to track that information for the tax process.
Thanks, Erin. So I'm going to talk a little bit about eligibility for the organizations who may host an intern or a cohort. So first thing to note is both the organization and the participating early career practitioner must be eligible. We mentioned this earlier. The organization must be an arts and cultural organization that has received at least one grant from the BC Arts Council through since April 2016. So in the last 5 years, through one of the following eligible BC Arts Council programs. Those are our operating assistance program, project assistance in theater, music, dance, arts periodicals, professional literary, arts training, book publishers, professional arts festivals, media arts, museums, Indigenous cultural centers, visual arts organizations, or community arts, or our arts-based community development program. Or you can be an arts and cultural organization that has received at least one grant in the last 5 years. So since April 1st, actually I think it's April 30th, 2016, through one of the BC Arts Council's program delivery partners, and those are BC Touring Council, through their Community Presenter Assistance Program, First Peoples Cultural Council through their Indigenous Arts Program, Creative BC through their Interactive Fund. And it's important to note that activities already funded through any of the above partnership programs are not eligible to receive funding through the Early Career Development Program. Or if your organization is an Indigenous government, friendship center, or Métis chartered community offering dedicated arts and culture activities, and the scope of work and learning for the intern or cohort is focused on those activities, then you are eligible to apply. So talk about eligibility for the specific project. An internship or a cohort project must prioritize high quality, measurable learning opportunities that will have a significant impact on the intern or cohort members. And it's important to note here that the organizational needs are secondary, which doesn't mean that we wouldn't expect the intern or the cohort to make a contribution to the organization and to the work of the organization, but that is not the primary measurement of the value of the project. And also the organization must designate a qualified mentor within the organization who will be available to work with and supervise the early career practitioner. It's important that the application, within the application, the organization identifies the early practitioner who will be engaged for the duration of the project. I'll go through some of the general eligibility criteria for the project. It's important that all projects compensate arts and cultural practitioners fairly in keeping with community context and industry standards. This is a high priority for the BC Arts Council, and this is a criteria that's in all of our program guidelines. As I've mentioned, you have to identify the early career practitioner who will be engaged for the duration of the project. Activities must follow COVID-19 public health orders and restrictions. Those are available at our website, always a live link from our website. And applicants will be asked to address how the project might adapt should these orders and restrictions change. Projects can offer a mix of learning and creation. However, as learning and knowledge transfer are the priorities of the program, the creation of new work must not be the sole or primary objective of the project. There must be specific learning opportunities and objectives and tangible measures. And projects can take place or may take place over a period of a minimum of 8 weeks and a maximum of 1 year. I will also direct you back to the guidelines when you're thinking about this to be aware of the list of exclusions in the guidelines. You should be aware of the kinds of activities that the program does not cover.
So we're aware that the early career development program is complex just due to the nature of it's almost like 4 different grant programs in one. And we're also aware that it might be your first time applying for a grant as an early career practitioner. So here is a little bit of background just on the application process, just to kind of get you started. So in order to apply, you're going to need to register in the online system, either as an individual or an organization. And once you have registered, it can take up to 4 days for us on our end to process the registration. So please don't leave this step to the last minute. Once you've received confirmation of registration, then, or while you're waiting for confirmation, please review the guidelines, including the eligibility criteria to make sure that you're eligible. And then you can find the ECD program on your dashboard or on your homepage under the funding opportunities bucket. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like in just a second. Once you're in the application, then you select the component that you're going to be applying to, because that will impact the questions that are outlined in the application. Go through, complete the application, save your work frequently, and when you're done, then submit the application. It's all done through the online system. So once you're registered in the system, this is what your homepage is going to look like. So when you sign in, you'll see this page. There's the kind of welcome section at the top. And then under this My Application section in the middle, you see this number 4 that says Funding Opportunities. If you click on that, that's where you're going to see any of the opportunities that are currently open for intake. It does not necessarily mean that you are eligible. It just means these are programs you might apply to if you are eligible. So find the Early Career Development Program by clicking there, and then you'll see, this is an old slide. It doesn't say requires attention anymore. It will say final reports. So if you receive a grant, this bottom section will say final reports, and you can fill those online as well when you're done your project.
So once you have submitted your grant or your application, all applications are received and reviewed by the program officers. We do some of our review and organizational work, and then we turn the applications over to a peer assessment panel. So the peer assessment process in the assessment of grants is really fundamental to the work of the BC Arts Council. It ensures the ability to engage in open, accountable, and transparent decision making, while also supporting freedom of expression and the exchange of artistic knowledge and experience. So for each funding program, a panel of 3 to 5 artists and/or arts and cultural practitioners are brought together to review applications and to determine the distribution of funding. These panels are made up of people with a mix of broad professional knowledge, expertise, geographical representation, and varied aesthetic, institutional, and cultural viewpoints, including those from Indigenous perspectives. Those panelists, assessors review your application based on the criteria which is outlined in the guidelines. Note that for the Early Career Development Program, it's a multidisciplinary assessment panel. So it's important for you to be aware of that when you're writing, because you should be sure to write for a wide audience. It's not necessarily going to be a group of people who are completely familiar with your sector or your discipline, unlike with some of our discipline-specific programs where you know that your assessors are all theater people or all literary people or creative writers. The nature of this program is that we bring people in with a range of experience.
So to clarify that, broadly speaking, Michelle runs the assessment meeting for anything associated with studio arts, and I will run the assessment meeting for anything associated with the performing arts. So that's how they're grouped in terms of the assessment meetings themselves. So we'll just talk about the assessment criteria then. So this is all outlined in detail in the guidelines. And it's what you should look at when you're answering the questions in the application. It's also exactly the same information that the assessors are going to be bearing in mind as they read your applications. So you can see by each of them, there is the specific weighting of how much each section is kind of impacting the overall scoring of the assessment of the application. So the key areas are alignment with strategic directions, worth 10%. These are the pieces discussed earlier regarding the priorities within the BC Arts Council strategic plan. The second one, impact and significance for the early career practitioner, is worth 50%. So this is the most important, most heavily weighted assessment criteria. For individuals that are applying, you can think about answering the questions, why me, why now, and why this project? This is from our colleague Walter that Michelle mentioned earlier, has given this great advice to really make sure that you're clearly articulating why it's important that you receive this funding, why now is the right time for you to be undertaking these activities, and why these activities in particular are important to be funded. Next, we have impact and significance for the arts and cultural community. We're 30%, so sort of second most highly weighted. So how will this project benefit the wider community? And community is up to you to identify. So this could mean the sector or your field of practice. It could be your geographic community, could be your cultural community, some combination thereof. It can also include your mentor and other people with whom the early career practitioner is going to be engaged in these activities. And then last is feasibility. So at 10%, this is, can you do this? Do you have a sound budget? What clear and thoughtful planning? What is your capacity to actually complete these activities?
So that's kind of capsule of a very complicated program. So we will answer questions, but just in terms of your next steps, as Erin said, it's really important to register in the online grant system. You have to be registered before you can start an application. It can take a few days, so just another warning, don't wait till the last minute to register. You'll also see on our website, you can download a sample application. Not completed, but it will show you all the questions in the application if you want to look at that before you actually register and access your own application. We appreciate that we've just given you a ton of information. It's all in the program guidelines, all available on our website. So carefully review the guidelines and pay attention to the assessment criteria. Take note of the deadline, Wednesday, 30th of June, 11:59 p.m. The window closes. It's not like a few years ago before we had our online grant application system when you could buy some time by when Canada Post deadlines or the deadline fell on the weekend, because it's an online electronic system. It will close down at midnight. And then finally, please don't hesitate to contact Erin or to contact me with any questions. Just in summary, in terms of our work at the BC Arts Council, Erin and I work as part of a team of 7. I think we're actually 8 now, Erin, called program officers. If you're looking for information about some of the other programs that we've referred to today, look at the staff listing on the website. You'll see a list of staff and the programs that they manage. Now we're ready for some questions, if there are any.
Great, thank you. Rosanna, can you, oh, you've already spotlighted me, perfect. Thanks so much to Erin and Michelle for all that information today. There are a couple questions in the chat, and if you do have more questions, I encourage you to pop them in there now. So I'll just run through those. So Miriam Manley asked, how do you define basic training, and what would basic training be for an arts administrator, for example?
Well, speaking as arts administrators, both of us, at least in our former lives before the BC Arts Council, we appreciate that arts administration is kind of a tricky one, because people can come to arts administration from many different paths, not necessarily through arts admin specific training. So I would encourage you, and Michelle, feel free to jump in if you have further thoughts, but I would encourage you to reach out to us if you are an arts administrator, and we can just talk through how you might frame that in your application, or to just talk through the eligibility of that basic training as it pertains to arts administration.
Yep, I completely agree. There's no direct path to the arts administration role, so we're happy to support myriad paths to that important position.
Great. So another question is, do we have to have a candidate identified prior to applying?
Yes, you do.
You do, yeah. For any of you that are already familiar with the co-op program, and I know from seeing some of the participants that certainly you are, it's very different from the co-op program in that respect. In the co-op program, you're applying to post a position and then you hire somebody. In the early career development program, it's very much based on that individual and the learning objectives and career objectives of that individual. So you can't apply if you don't have somebody in mind.
Right. Someone else asks, I qualify for wage subsidy through Work BC. Can that be applied in conjunction with this program?
I don't see why not. So yeah, I'm not familiar with ins and outs of that program for an organization and how they would manage that. If you were receiving a wage subsidy, presumably you're thinking about an internship or possibly a cohort project. So that's just, I think, something you'd really have to work out with the host organization. But I don't see any reason why an organization couldn't combine those two sources of money to support an even higher salary for an intern,
Great.
which we can get behind that.
All right. Will the BC Arts Council provide 100% of the funding for this position? Or if not, how much does the organization have to provide?
Yes to 100% funding.
Yes to 100%. Yeah, not all of the programs at the BC Arts Council offer 100% of the application of the budget, of the project budget, but this one does. The priority for the funding is to support the early career practitioner, and this again is where I would encourage you to look to that list of exclusions. There are some clearly outlined things that are not eligible to spend that money on, but yes, it can cover 100%.
And I think an important piece that we actually left out is that the maximum you can apply for is $30,000. You don't have to apply for 30,000, but you can. So as an organization, you can apply for 30,000, and all of that can go towards salary and or mercs, other required benefits. And for an individual artist, you can apply for, or you can request up to 30,000 in subsistence funds. Actually, I think you can only apply for 24,000 in subsistence because it's 2,000, maximum 2,000 a month. And then if you were going to be applying for the full 30, then that other 6,000 would either go towards other expenses, mentor fees, or other related expenses.
Okay, and someone just asking if you could both maybe enter your emails into the chat so that people can email you if they need to.
Certainly. Our email addresses are on the website. If you go to the program page, you can get there from that page as well.
Great. And I'm just going to read out this comment. It's really sad that international students that have finished their studies aren't captured in the eligibility criteria. Is there any advocacy happening on this front? Saying there's similar problems with other funding programs discriminating against international students. So are you guys aware of anything like that?
So we are aware of it, and we are somewhat bound by the BC residency requirement. I think as a government-funded body, I think we have some restrictions around that, and I think that's probably the place where an international student would bump up against that and agree. Would be great to support. I'm sure there's some incredible projects that could happen with some of the international students doing work here.
I will just say that for the co-op program, organizations can hire international co-op or work integrated learning students. So it's different from the early career development program in that respect.
Okay, thank you. Is there a sample PDF that is filled up from a former successful applicant that got funding that could be used as an example?
I love that. That's a great idea, but no.
It is. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I've certainly seen it with other grant programs where funders have offered a completed sample application that provides some additional guidance, and I appreciate the question. I think it's something that we should be looking at as a way to support applicants, especially people who are new to writing grant applications and submitting grant applications. So thanks for that question. We'll follow up.
Right. Does the intern have to be on payroll with all the extra benefits?
Yes.
Yep.
Members of a cohort do not. A cohort is slightly different. they can be paid through an honorarium or some other mechanism. They, because it could be a number of participants, we couldn't put that same restriction on, but an intern has to receive MERCs, has to be paid as part of payroll.
Right. Someone else asking if basic training could be covered with work experience, as in, I think they mean as in the type of a type of work integrated learning. And this person is pointing out that they're a self-taught visual artist.
So this is a question we have been wrestling with a lot over the last little while, and how we define self-taught and what that looks like. And because it's there's a kind of a multitude of answers depending on your discipline and what the self-taught, what the components of that self-taught really are. So in that case, so the answer is maybe. And I would encourage you to contact me or contact Erin. As a visual artist, you should contact me, and we can talk through the specifics of your experience and how that might fit our basic training requirements.
Okay. Someone else asking, is there a list of the types of internships this is aimed at? Is it mainly for technicians or practitioners or administrators? Do you have any idea of what type of roles these will be?
The answer is no, there's no list, but then the secondary answer is yes, all of those things that you mentioned are great examples of different approaches to internships. It's quite broad in terms of what that internship might be. So if you have something specific that you want to run by Michelle or I, feel free to give us a call and talk it through, and we're happy to sort of guide you or confirm if that meets the eligibility of an internship. But it is intentionally quite wide, so that organizations can identify what they want the path of the intern to be, and so that the early career practitioner can identify what they want their learning experiences and career learning to be from that internship as well.
Okay, someone else asking, I'm not sure if they're referring to the co-op grant as opposed to the early career development, but asking, would co-op positions supported by this program be listed in the co-op office at UVic? And I believe that would depend on the organization posting for the position.
Yeah, so hopefully I'm understanding the question correctly, but with the co-op program, an organization as part of their application they have to list the post-secondary institutions from which they plan to seek a co-op student, and they have to actually establish contact with those institutions as part of their application. Just to confirm that their job description and the number of hours align with the requirements of the co-op position. And then once they have received funding and want to go ahead with posting that position, then they will go forth and post it to wherever they said they were going to. And there's nothing stopping them or preventing them from posting it more broadly as well. We just want to make sure from the outset that they have at least reached out to the primary co-op or work integrated learning department at the institution, so that they're not accidentally receiving funding and then hiring a student for a position that doesn't meet the student's requirements for graduation or that kind of thing.
Okay. Is the co-op hiring grant currently open, and can it be stacked with the student work placement program?
It's not currently open. No, it only runs once a year, and you can expect to see that. Generally, the intake opens in November. Keep an eye out, and I should say that all of the programs at the BC Arts Council are reviewed on an annual basis and updated on an annual basis. So keep an eye out for that one come the fall. The second half of that question was
if the funding can be stacked with the student work placement program. I think that it can. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that. It's a federal funding program.
I would have to learn more about that. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know off the top of my head, but I will, if you want to call me, I can look into it and work with the talented people at ACE-WIL for direction on that as well.
Next question, can the year the grant covers begin before the grant deadline in June, or grant results notification in October. When does the year have to start, I guess?
It cannot start before the program deadline. It can start before the funding decision has been made at your own risk.
Fair enough. Does the project have to be visual, or can it be something behind the scenes? This person says, I'd like to work as a curator or collections manager, and would that be open to projects in either area?
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
Behind the scenes is great. That's where a lot of the important work is happening.
Right. Does the internship position need to be full-time?
No, it does not.
Right.
And in fact, we used to say in our guidelines that we prioritized or certainly encouraged full-time positions, and we've kind of backed away from that this year, recognizing that may be a barrier to some folks or to some organizations for whom that might stretch capacity or just the possibility of a particular project. So no, full-time is not required.
Right.
It does need to be at least 8 weeks, though.
Yes.
I'm just noting the time. It does look like there's quite a few questions left. So if Erin and Michelle, if you're okay staying on, I know some people need to leave, but I'd hopefully like to get through as many of these questions as possible, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yep.
All right, so just so everyone knows, we're going to run over time a little bit. Next question here is, what about flexibility in changing plans with COVID-19? They say, right now, as I'm looking at a mentorship, if I had a mentor fee that was originally allocated for virtual one-on-one, could that shift to be used to other activities for in-person training if plans change or opportunities come up?
Yeah, even outside of COVID-19, we have always recognized that with the early career development program, things sometimes change. You may have a plan with a mentor, and then the mentor gets a great gig that they need to kind of defer the timeline, or you might get a great gig and you need to defer the timeline, or things happen, and we try to be as adaptable and accommodating as possible with that. We just ask that you keep in touch, let us know if things are changing, and we can talk through how to address that. As a guiding principle, we do try to maintain the spirit that the assessors were excited about your grant in the first place. Michelle, I'm not feeling very articulate about this, but we don't want you to stray completely in a different direction, because that's not why the assessment panel was excited about your work. They were excited about the project that you applied with. So trying to find a way to carry on with activities while still honoring the intention for the project that you were funded for initially.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just add to that. We've mentioned this earlier, but there is a specific piece of this that relates to COVID, and that because it is a current and ever-changing scenario for all of us right now, that we do specifically ask in the application that if there is an element of your project that may be affected by COVID. So if you are planning a mentorship with someone, if you live in Victoria and you're planning mentorship with someone in Vancouver, face-to-face mentorship, and if travel restrictions change and that kind of travel is not allowed, what are you going to do? What's your plan to address that? So that is a very specific question in the guidelines.
Okay. Can your early career development candidate begin as a contract employee, then transition to employee if the grant is successful?
That's a tricky one. So the program is not, it's not meant to support an organization, operating expenses of an organization, which it's kind of what that's describing. If someone is an employee and they transition into an internship role, it's not really a clean transition into an internship if it's just continuing their job, but that job is now funded by the BC Arts Council. So in that case, I would say no. If the job was a temporary job, or if it was developed for a specific purpose, and then the internship is something else, very focused on the training and learning opportunities for the intern, then I would say there's an opening there. I don't know, Erin, if you have more nuance around that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think, I'll just maybe add that sometimes in the room, assessors will read an application and sort of scratch their heads and say, this seems a little bit more like it's building capacity for the organization and not so much about supporting the early career development of this individual. So I would just keep that in the back of your mind when you're considering that particular instance, for example.
Okay. Does the mentor need to be a Canadian citizen or resident? And must they be living in Canada, or can they be international and learn from via Zoom or other online platform?
Yes. There's no requirement, there's no residency or citizenship requirement for the mentor, or requirement for where the mentor is located. In a non-COVID, or the before times, as Andrew at our workplace calls it, you could travel to Europe or to Asia for a mentorship, but that's not eligible activity right now. We have restrictions in place that don't permit that. So yes, the mentor can be living anywhere, as long as the COVID restrictions are met through virtual means or otherwise.
Great. Someone else just asking about the recording of the presentation, and I'll just let you know that I'll be sending out a survey probably tomorrow, and it hopefully will include the link to the recording as well as the slides. So just stay tuned for that. If not tomorrow, then the day after, but definitely before the end of the week. I'm just scrolling along here. I think that's it from questions from the audience. So thank you so much to Erin and Michelle for joining us today, and for everyone for coming and listening to the presentation and learning more about the programs on offer. Erin and Michelle did put their emails in the chat, and I'm going to put mine in the chat right now. So if you do have any follow-up questions, you can email me, and I will get in touch.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for organizing this. It's been great. And as I say, thank you to all of you for attending. It's been wonderful to be able to answer some questions for a large group of folks. And I hope that you'll reach out to us with other questions as they arise.
Right. And thank you, Rosanna, for being our tech background support.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.